Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Music. In this case, we're going to be going over the recent video I did for the Three Doors Down tribute. The track which I did called Take Me Down. Now, we're going to go over this track in a little bit of a unique way, and I apologize in advance for this, but the video that you saw, a little bit misleading, not totally, because everything that you heard as far as notes was composed by Orb Composer. But for the final output of the drums, I was rather unhappy, and I'm going to let you hear it with the drums that Orb Composer did, and I tried to work them, but Orb Composer just makes it very difficult to do drums properly, so I ended up scrapping it in post and replacing it with just some MIDI from files that I had available for drum beats from Addictive Drums. And so I apologize if that seems misleading, but truth is the sounds that you got, the guitars, bass guitar, all that rhythm and piano or lead synth actually was in fact done with Orb Composer. So the only thing that wasn't was the percussion, and I think everybody here who's watched this, at least watched me do work before, knows that I don't like the way Orb Composer handles drums currently. I do believe that will be changing in a future update. It's just at this time it's very difficult to change the drums. Like, for example, I can't go in here and change the instrument range. Now it says, you know, I can change the MIDI range, but if I change it to like 42, you know, like if that's the key on the keyboard, 42 or whatever, then it's supposed to move to that note, so that way, you know, the closed hi-hat is on 42 or whatever. But for some reason it just doesn't work. It doesn't do it. I'll save the project, come back to it, and then it'll be back to 38, for example. So why is that the case? I think it's just a bug, and I think these are just things that need to be worked out. But we're going to go over, instead of focusing on the drums, we're going to be focusing on the instrumentation and the orchestration of the guitars and the guitar leads and all that, and how I came up with those ideas and where they came from and what was inspired by them. Obviously, the inspiration was Three Doors Down, but what specific track? In this case, it was Kryptonite, and one of my favorite tracks, and one of my mother's favorite tracks from Three Doors Down as well. So, let's quickly just take a look at this, one listen through with the drums that Orb Composer did, and then we will listen to my final output that I did with the all of this here, and then just my replaced drums. So enjoy. So that's... I'll give credit to Orb Composer's drums for being within the realm of the rhythms that's going on around it. I think that actually is pretty cool that it does that, that the rhythms that play in the drums tend to kind of match what's going on automatically with the rhythms of, say, the lead parts or whatever, the accompaniment, that kind of thing. That's pretty cool. But for some reason, they just sound really stilted and not very natural. And I don't know why that is, but I'm going to let you listen again to the final drums that I ended up using, so that means we're just going to end up muting all of this and pausing this for a moment and going over to my Studio One and taking a look at that. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and remove this track. So if I unmute all of this, here's the final track, and just listen to how much more natural these drums sound just from the MIDI that I had used. So for me, those drums just sounded a lot more natural, and I know I'm harping a little bit on drums, and I apologize. This track, the drums are an important backbone to the structure of a piece of music. So I want to talk a little bit about drums. So there's a couple things. One is that, again, like I said, Orb Composer actually does a pretty decent job of getting the rhythms of the drums to match the rhythms of what's going on around it. But the problem that I have with it is that it just feels stilted and it doesn't feel natural. And those drums that you heard just now from Studio One, which I used addictive drums, and for the most part I just used, part of the library here of drum beats that they have. I didn't really make a whole lot of my own drum beats. There was some customization of it, but other than that, it was pretty much MIDI for the most part. That was just drag and drop. So I wish that I had more control over the drums in Orb Composer, and I feel like maybe a lot of us feel that way that use Orb Composer, and I think, like I said, that's going to be coming in an update soon. More control over the drum tracks, but for now, the result that you heard, I know, I apologize if it seems misleading, because I know that it was, what you saw was this with the audio from these drums. So that can seem a little misleading, and I apologize if anybody takes it that way, but that wasn't the intention. So the intention was to show mostly the guitar and how those played out together, and the bass guitar and the orchestration all together as a result, and what we ended up with. And so I think that it's actually a really good track in that way, and a really good demo of Orb Composer. I would really like to see more control over being able to choose my MIDI range, maybe choose a simpler way, because this is just like, what does this mean to you? Like, I know what it means, but what does that mean, right? I would like to be able to just maybe on a keyboard just define where my drum notes are, like, tom here, cymbal here, that kind of thing. This will make doing things a lot easier in the drums, and being able to define exactly where my drum sounds are. So, for example, my low tom is not at note 45. I think it's note like 47 or something like that. So I don't really remember which one it is for addictive drums, but whatever the mapping is, I should be able to remap these, and I just can't. And so that's why I ended up redoing the drums. So again, if that seems misleading, sorry about that. But so let's just talk about this without any of the drums. We're going to just remove all the drum tracks, and we're just going to look at the bare bones music. So let's start with the opening. The opening, we have just a simple acoustic guitar and an electric guitar. So the electric guitar is actually from Evolution Strawberry. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite guitar patches that I've ever used for electric guitar, and highly recommended. And also the Evolution steel string guitar, which is a fantastic one. In this case, we're using the Deadly Montuno patch, and for the two guitars, we have Evolution Strawberry. There's presets that I've picked out and used, and then altered a little bit in the mixing, which you can see here. There's some effects and stuff going on here that I added, but these effects could just as easily have been added in Orb Composer. I just didn't do it that way because I connect to the DAW when I work currently. That may change in the future update when things become a little bit more streamlined in Orb Composer. I may start trying to get away from that. But right now I still connect to DAW when I'm a DAW, sorry, whenever we're doing work like this. So let's listen to this opening and just talk about that for a moment. So it's a really simple opening. There's not really much happening there. It's a very simple rhythm. It's set to average and low complexity, average momentum, low complexity, and the rhythm guitar, which is the acoustic guitar in this case, is just playing mostly whole notes and half notes throughout. So I think, yeah, it's actually just set to whole notes in this case. So it's just a nice clean rhythm opening, and the chord progressions that we are using are in fact from the Kryptonite track from Three Doors Down. So we actually end up having that sort of feel, that vibe, that, Kryptonite, yeah. I'm not a great singer, so sorry about that. But if you listen to this section here, there's something in the bass here that's going on, which is it's set to low, but it sounds like it's playing in very low. And this is an issue that I've brought up before, where for some reason Orb Composer will play the bass even though it says low. It's set to very low, so you have to set it to like medium or something else, and then set it back to low. And if we listen to it again, it actually changes back, I believe. Let's listen to it. Yeah, so now it's in the correct range. So you'll notice something here. There's a lot of split chords that I use, and the reason I did that is because that's the way the chord progression was in Kryptonite from Three Doors Down. A minor, B minor, and it's A minor for one beat, B minor for 3 beats, and that was kind of split like this, so 1, 2, 3, and then B minor for 1 beat at the beginning, and then switching to G minor for 3 beats. So it's like the first beat of every bar is the key, a new chord, and then there's 3 beats of another chord. So this is in 4/4 time, but there's a little bit of a problem with Orb Composer as well that I noticed, that if you try to do these sort of split chords with anything like question, answer, question, anything like that, it just won't do it. Like if I split this chord, you'll see it goes right back to standard. It's if it'll split. There we go. Yeah. So I went back to standard, and that presents a bit of a problem when it comes to trying to create melodies with these split chords that you want to sound coherent. So what I ended up doing was when I split the chord, I'm trying to get it Control Z back, but it takes a little while to get there. There we go. So what I did is I split the melody into two halves. So we have the first half and the second half here. So the first half is playing pretty much, you know, low momentum, low complexity, and we'll just solo that for a moment, just so you can hear it. Okay, so the first half of that is a nice, you know, good melody, I think, and then the second half of that is it's basically a copy paste, and then I kind of tweaked it a little bit, and I just kind of like, you know, recreated the clip until it came up with something that kind of matched the first thing. And this is the problem with this sort of answer question thing, because this right here would solve the problem immediately. If I were able to do this with split chords, it would, you know, have this sort of question and then an answer based on the question, and those two statements together, those, you know, 4-bar statements would actually be coherent together. But because I have to use the standard, it's sort of one long melody, and I wanted it to be 4 bars of two coherent question and answers. So together what we ended up with is this. And to me, I think that actually works pretty well together. So those two things together. And then we do the same thing here. We have the melody split into 2 parts because, again, we're splitting chords. So whenever you're splitting chords, you're going to be forced into the standard block structure. Currently, that may also change in a future update, I don't know, but I did report it as something that I was uncomfortable with. And then we have a section here underneath. So we have this guitar here. It's kind of just playing backup to the melody. And then we have acoustic guitar underneath that. So we have these two again from the beginning. Kryptonite. Sorry, I can't help myself. It really does sound like that kind of, you know, feel. So I love that song. It's a classic. So if we go back to this, what we see now is that instead of using just whole notes here in the rhythm guitar, the acoustic guitar, we've changed it to momentum low and complexity low. So it's now got a little bit more emotion in it. Not emotion, motion. Sorry. And when we put those together, we get this kind of nice sound with the motion of the guitar and the lead guitar underneath. And then there's a break section here where the bass actually plays a lovely funky solo, which was recommended by a friend of mine who said, I think that you should have a funk bass solo. So I was like, oh, okay, we'll try it out. So I put the melody in the bass, and we tried to do something cool like that. And again, it's split into 2 parts because I wanted it to kind of have a coherent melody that goes twice like that. So we'll see what that sounds like here together. Lead guitar actually picks up quite nicely there from where the bass guitar picked up, or where we left off, sorry. So the lead guitar picks up nicely from where the bass guitar leaves off. And then we have a rock organ that's added. It's kind of just accenting those melodic notes of the melody. And then we have another break section here where in fact we have just the guitars and the bass playing just a simple background. And then we have the rhythm here. Very high momentum. That took me a while to get because I had to keep recreating the clip until I got something I like. So you can recreate these clips and you can get, you know, different formulations of what you're going for. And you'll end up with different iterations of these different styles. And so the trick to Orb Composer is to kind of know where you want to go with a track, know what the structure of it is, and then kind of just recreate stuff, recreate clips, rewrite the notes, like hit the note change button, recreate all the notes. If you know the chord structure that you're going for, which you can, by the way, there's a great website resource called Chordify, which has all tons of songs where you can get the chord progressions and just put them in Orb Composer and then, you know, play with them. So this is what I did actually for this track, is I got the chord progression for Kryptonite and just dropped it in here. So for the most part, I mean, it's not precisely the same because I did not, you know, end it the same way, and it's not the same length of that song, and of course there's no singer. But for the most part, most of the chord progression follows along with what you find in the song Kryptonite. There are some differences, and the differences were more creative decisions than anything else. But if you know what you're going for, if you have like a reference track in mind, and you want to aim for something, what you really want to do is just kind of lay down the groundwork, lay down the block structures first. You know, get the structure. So I want the structure. I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, verses, whatever, and I want 2 of those verses to have lead guitar, or 3 verses to have lead guitar, whatever. And then I want just a nice, short, sweet ending, you know, and then we end up at about, like, what, a minute and a half of music, minute and 46 seconds. Know the structure that you're going for, and then use your reference track. Steal from your reference track. It's okay to steal in music. I mean, that's pretty much what music is built on, is other people's ideas, you know. All music that we've ever heard is always built on some other idea, something else we've already heard before 100,000 times, you know. There's nothing new or profound that's going to come from music. There are good ways and bad ways to go about doing that, but for the most part, if you understand why a chord progression is what it is, and you can use it in context, in the context that you're going for, then, you know, use it. So that's really my advice for anyone who uses Orb Composer and wants to really dig into, how do I get a good chord progression? Pick a song that you like, and then go to Chordify, or, you know, there's other websites as well that have the chord progressions available, and you can dig into it and find out what the chord progression is, and, you know, use it in Orb Composer, and then let Orb Composer compose something over it. Try it, see what it sounds like. It'll probably end up sounding something a lot like the song that it's based off of, but it'll also be unique and original because Orb Composer is kind of coming up with its own ways of writing over it. So there's really different ways to approach this, and my approach is, for songs like this, because I don't know how to write rock music, was to look up a reference track and find the chords. So that's pretty much it as far as going over this track. There's not really a whole lot to cover. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you got something out of it, because I think there's a lot to learn here about how to create a track from something that you're inspired by, or a track that you really like, especially if the track is something like a rock track or a pop track that you want to kind of, you know, copy, not copy, but mimic, you know, that you want to pay tribute to. And that's really what we've been doing. That's the past few tracks that we've done have all been tributes to something else. And in the last case, there was like a tribute to the Ode to King's Landing, link in the description and link up at the top for that video. And there's also the Orion, which was a tribute to Deadmau5. And yeah, I used some of Deadmau5's chord progressions and the way he uses polyrhythms. We may go over that track at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's just take the time with it, you know? Don't... Orb Composer can write music in 5 seconds, but it's not going to write good music in 5 seconds. You really have to take the time and dig into it and work with it. Now, if you have templates that you built that are already ready to go, then of course, yeah, you can probably churn out 100 of these tracks in a few seconds, just recreate everything and whatever. But to me, if you really want the music to have soul and to have heart, you can't just rely on Orb Composer's just first thing that it outputs. You have to go in and dig in a little bit deeper, you know. So, but thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you got something out of this, and I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, give us a like. And if you want to get your copy of Orb Composer, click the Buy Now button on the screen. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And you can also join our Discord community by clicking the link in the description. Thanks for watching.